effectively disbanded one day after NEH grant recipients receive a message saying that their research is no longer aligned with the presidential agenda, effectively stating that humanities research is no longer a national priority. So we're in a moment where I think there's a considerable and real angst about how we resource research in the humanities, how we continue to effectively do our work and not even do the work that we're doing, but to be able to accelerate our work, to innovate upon our work. And so I'm very grateful that each of these funders has taken the time in this really tumultuous moment in order to give us their expertise and to engage in a dialogue about the future of the humanities, particularly from a funding perspective. So I will call my funders up here. Please join me at the table and we'll present. We have James Schulman. Dr. Schulman serves as Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the American Council of Learned Societies, where he has new ACLS program areas associated with digital scholarship, publishing, research on institutional change, and publicly engaged humanities, many of the issues that we've already been talking about today. His most recent book, The Synthetic University, How Higher Education Can Benefit from Shared Solutions and Save Itself, was published by Princeton University Press in October 2023. So I hope we can talk about some of those issues today. He also led the writing of the U.S. section of the World Humanities Report and the report of the Commission on Fostering and Sustaining Diverse Digital Scholarship. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from him today. We also have Elizabeth Neary, Associate Director of Fellowships and Academic Programs at the Newberry Library. She holds a PhD in Early Modern Spanish Literature. On a broad scale, Elizabeth administers the Newberry's Fellowships operation, managing the long-term and short-term fellowships, scholars in residence, and scholarly seminars. She also oversees undergraduate study programs. On a day-to-day basis, Elizabeth collaborates with scholars and fellows, providing support for their research needs, facilitating their access to the library's resources, and organizing lectures, seminars, and workshops. She's also created a variety of partnerships. One of the ones I like is the Beer History Center, creating a new beer history fellowship. So in the School of Public Policy, we do have a faculty member looking at the economics of home brewing. So would be very interested in getting in on that. And then lastly, I'll introduce Yvonne Plotter, who leads the operations and strategy for the technical arm at Office of Eric Schmidt. She focuses on building technology products, scaling social ventures, and developing partnerships between the private and public sectors. One of her key initiatives is helping develop an organization designed to bring greater transparency to social media and the impact it has on society. And she will be joined by two of her colleagues, which I'll have introduce themselves when they come online. I would also like to note that we did receive positive confirmations from our colleagues at the NEH, but they are no longer able to be with us for obvious reasons. So with those introductions, I will turn it over. Each of our panelists will have about 10 minutes to say a little about the work that they're doing, and then we will open it up for questions from the audience. So thank you, James.
Great. So there's a ton to cover. I'm going to speak a little fast. I hope that's okay. If I do the microphone drifting thing, just somebody point it out, please. I'll do my best Mick Jagger and try to be up close. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk briefly about our work at the American Council of Learned Societies, but I hope in dialogue throughout the day we can talk about where this goes or what else I know. Or the problem with funding is if you know one funding agency, you know one funding agency. So we don't have a training program. So let me talk about the various things we do. We're a bit of an unusual organization. So the name, it's a 105-year-old name. The American Council of Learned Societies. My daughters have no shortage of pleasure making fun of that. But it comes from working with academic societies in the humanities and social sciences for 100 years. And so there are 80 societies that we work with, from the sublime to the ridiculous, meaning that we work with them on generational change in their fields and big, changing in intellectual frameworks, and also on what happens when one of the 3 hotels at the conferences is on strike, but just in the dining room and not in the other parts of the facility. So things like that. But I bring up the work with societies because so much of what we do in emerging fields is about building networks that aren't there. If you work on Jane Austen, there are plenty of places to find your people and to go to your meetings and to publish your findings. And if you're working on seeds and the history of agriculture, you're making your own communities. And how do you sustain that work and how do you keep it going? So I'm very interested in the role of the horizontal communities that cross disciplinary boundaries or bring people together. But many of you in the humanities or social sciences will know about ACLS for our fellowship programs. So we have some fellowship programs that we fund ourselves. So we have a $180 million endowment, which at the moment, from which we have some control over funding that we do. So over the 100 years of doing fellowship programs, we've gotten reasonably good at the craft of fellowship programs, meaning like, how do you make a good call for proposal? How do you make sure that the panels are actually instructed to do what you said, what you asked people to apply for? How do you make sure that people get paid and stuff like that? So we have fellowship programs, and I can talk about some that we have control over, but some of you know about the ACLS fellowship program. Now, these are all peer-reviewed programs, and what's really beautiful about the peer review process is we don't sit here and say, here is what you all find valuable. It's your peers. And so in our main program, candidates are first reviewed by people within their discipline, but then the panel that oversees this program, the peer review panel, are people drawn from different fields so that the work is deemed on the basis of, does it rise above just being interested people in the field? So some of the things that we've heard about today, these would make great fellowship applications. Now, sadly, there aren't that many fellowships out there, so the percentage rate is kind of awful to look at, which doesn't mean it's not a judgment of those proposals. It's just the batting averages. I'm going to highlight two other programs that we've done. So when I say we got good at the craft of fellowship, and I'm not bragging about this because I haven't done this. This is my colleagues. We also serve as an intermediary that carries out fellowship programs on behalf of others. So the Mellon Foundation, lots of money, lots of talent and insight and vision, is not as close to the ground as we are. So they say, we want to do a fellowship program, and you all can, through your networks, get people to apply and get the panels together and stuff. Please do that for us. So we do that in a number of different ways. So I'll highlight two programs we've done that for recently. So one is we have a program funded by Mellon, which is a digital justice grant. So these are both startup and sort of expansion grants for people working in digital methods on issues of social and racial justice. So these are, a wide range of programs, but this is, so again, we carry that out on behalf of Mellon. Another program that we did, and sadly, I'm thinking of this today because of NEH. So when NEH got the American Rescue Plan money, one of the things that they were allowed to do, which are never allowed to do, is to fund re-granting programs. So they came to us and they said, "Oh, ACLS, you're good at fellowships. Why don't you just give some more fellowships? Because we can give you some money for that." And we said, "No, this is COVID times. Everyone's getting drawn back to the core. Everyone has to do what get back not in the classroom, figure out how to teach on Zoom and everything like that." And so we were worried that programs about publicly engaged scholarship were going to get cut back. They're always on the fringe anyway. They're always, in the 25th hour of a faculty member's day. So we said, we want to have a competition for re-granting around publicly engaged humanities programs. And so we had $3.5 million from NEH that we did a competition, put it together, and supported 27 projects around the country in digital humanities, or in publicly engaged projects. Many of them were digital. The most important part of that is like 27 projects got funded, but the most important part of that is the signal that said this work matters. And at a time when institutions, and we're back in those times, have many things that they have to do, some newer things, as exciting as they are to faculty and to students, sometimes fall by the wayside. So one of the key parts of funding, in addition to supporting people's work, is to sort of say, here's what matters, here are the norms of the field, here's the norms of what we're doing, here's how we're evolving the enterprise. I'm going to just say a few things about our work outside of we're supporting societies and and our fellowship and regranting programs. Oh, just on the fellowship and regranting programs, if you're interested in these programs, on our website there are tips, to how to apply. But also, one thing we've done more and more, started actually with that NEH program, are office hours. So we do office hours for all these programs now. So you can call in. I mean, we don't pre-read all applications or anything like that, but we're happy to answer questions about the program and how it's structured and all that. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is by dint of sticking around for 100 years and having these horizontal networks of the academic societies, we sort of see ourselves in the middle of a lot of different flows of knowledge. So from the societies, we also have a group that we call the University Research Consortium, where 44 major research universities with interests in the humanities and social sciences work with us. Now, 25 years ago, it was a little bit of a quid pro quo. Like, they gave us some money because all of their faculty members get fellowships. And now our fellowships go to a wider range of institutions and people. And these deans and these universities stick with us. The deans get together, the representatives of the institution, they get to talk and collaborate and think, how do your reward structures work around things like community-engaged work or collaborative scholarship? So it's a really important network. All of you know that, higher education in this country is 3,500 tall trees standing in isolation. And sometimes we work together, but not enough, right? So times that we have to have community to think about the structures that support and reward scholarship, especially innovative scholarship, are really important. The last thing, and I think it was mentioned, it's in my bio, we had a convening of 21 member commission on fostering and sustaining digital scholarship associated with race and social justice. So that report just came out on it's on our site. We're publishing it in Manifold soon, but basically, it's very broad ranging. It's not just like technical, how do you maintain digital projects, but how do you reward structures, the evolving norms of community engaged work, and how universities do this well and how they don't. And so that kind of thing. So a lot of different modes of action, because we could just do things like we did in 1919, but the world's a little different. So I'm going to pass it along to Liz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, James. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth Neary. Please call me Liz or Lizzie. I'm from the Newberry Library, which is, should probably be able to click. There we go. Thank you. Which is a research institution in Chicago. And we've been lucky enough to collaborate with the ACLS on several fellowships for a long time. So we're really grateful for that. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the fellowship and scholarly opportunities at the Newberry Library. So just to give you an idea about the library, it's different than the ACLS or the NEH in that it's primarily a library collection of rare books and manuscripts. So most of our fellowships are based in Chicago at the library itself. We're an independent research library, so we also have an endowment, though more modest than the ACLS endowment. And we support research projects that advance humanities scholarships and engage with the library's vast collections, but we also are really committed to engaging with the community and the public. And our library, though it is a research library, is free and open to the public, so anyone can come who's not a researcher, and we're trying really hard to engage the community of people who use the library for personal use and our scholars who are doing research projects and investigation there. So an overview of our fellowships: we offer about 10 to 12, sometimes as many as 15 long-term fellowships every year. Some of these are funded by Newberry funds, some funded by groups like Mellon or the NEH. But when a scholar applies to a long-term fellowship, they will be put in the pool of all of our different types of long-term fellowship. We get about 100 applications a year for our long-term fellowships.
Then we have short-term fellowships. We accept 40. Oh, and I should say long-term fellowships are considered fellowships that last for 5 to 9 months. So it's about a semester or a full academic year. And our fellows receive $5,000 per month during the months that they'll be at the Newberry. Short-term fellowships, we can offer a lot more. We offer 40 to 45. Same thing as the long-term fellowships. A person can apply online and be submitted to the pool of our many different types of short-term fellowships. Some are subject-specific, some are related to the stage that the scholar is at the time. So early career scholars, that type of thing, but you only need to submit one application for all of those. And like I mentioned before, scholars considering a fellowship at the Newberry have to commit to being at the Newberry 4 days a week during the months of their fellowship. So with the exception of Indigenous Studies, where we offer 1 or 2 specific fellowships where the person can be out of Chicago, otherwise everyone has to be in Chicago. But we see that as a huge advantage to build an excellent scholarly community. So eligibility for our long-term fellowships, the person has to have a PhD in hand. For short-term fellowships, the scholar can be working towards a PhD, and for our Beer Culture Society fellowship, the person can be an MA student or an interested scholar. So there is some flexibility, but they generally tend to be for professional researchers. And then fellowship-specific criteria is online for each different type of fellowship. There's sometimes different criteria that you still only fill out one application, but sometimes there's supplementary questions to just gauge fit of the scholar with what that specific fellowship is looking for. In general, successful fellowships for our program show significance of the proposed project, fit with the Newberry collection. So not only is this a project that is a good fit with our core collection strengths, but also does the project have to be done at the Newberry? Would it be hard to do it elsewhere at another library? And I should just mention our collection strengths are vast. So it's rare books, manuscripts, maps, also secondary literature. We have core subjects such as American history and culture, American Indian and Indigenous studies, Chicago history, the Midwest, Chicago culture and Midwest culture, the history of the book, maps, travel, exploration, medieval, Renaissance, and early modern Europe, modern manuscripts, performing arts, postcards, and religion. And I will also say we have brilliant librarians at the Newberry. So if you are just a little bit interested, but you're not sure that the library might be a good fit with your research, you can email research@newberry.org, and there are experts who know the collection very well and can sort of point you in the direction of what specific materials might be of use. And I just want to mention, at the Newberry, our scholars have the opportunity for cross-disciplinary and cross-institutional collaboration while they're there. Fellows participate in a weekly colloquium and a fellow seminar where they present their work or circulate work in progress. And we think that we've always found that this has created really exciting conversation and has changed the direction of research projects. And we also try, and one of our big goals is to try to get our scholars to engage more with the public at the Newberry. So we're creating, this is a picture of some of our scholars giving a public talk to an audience of about 50 people. That's sort of lifting the veil on scholarly research. You know, what are these scholars doing at the Newberry? So we're always trying to sort of knit together the broader public and the scholars at the Newberry. I also want to mention that we offer undergraduate programs for any faculty member who might be interested in bringing a group of undergraduates to the Newberry during a semester, winter break, summer break. We're really interested in collaborating with with faculty to do those types of projects. And we have a consortium for Renaissance studies and a consortium for Indigenous studies. Those specific consortiums offer a lot of exciting programming for undergrad specifically. So, yep, I think I'm gonna, and I'll just tell you one quick scholarly success story. One of our recent fellows discovered that one of the manuscripts at the Newberry is made out of maguey agave paper, which was very exciting. We did not know this, and this is sort of tech and humanities coming together. They sent the fibers of this manuscript off to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and we're delighted to find out that this is the largest manuscript of maguey paper made of the agave plant that we know of so far. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. James, Liz, it's a pleasure to be on a panel with you all. My name is Yvonne Plotter. I'm exceptionally proud and happy to be here because I am a graduate of Georgia Tech. I studied international affairs and modern languages. French was my language. And I am incredibly dedicated to this institution, and it's an honor to be here. I am joined by my colleague Maya, who will give the most interesting part of the presentation, but I'll just quickly walk you through. I think this is not, is this, oh, Maya, did you add these? Yes. Okay, 1 second, actually, one. Okay, here we go. Just a quick background on who we are. So we are with Eric and Wendy Schmidt. Eric was the CEO of Google from 2001 to 2011, where he led the company through extraordinary change with Gmail, ads. He and his wife began their philanthropic massive contribution to our society in 2006 with the foundation of the Schmidt Family Foundation, which Wendy now leads. And under them, they have several entities. We're going to hear from Maya with Schmidt Sciences. We also have the Schmidt Family Foundation, as I mentioned, which is our impact investing arm. 11th Hour Racing, which is dedicated to the restorement of ocean health through the sailing community. And then also Schmidt Ocean Institute, which is focused on, it actually offers scientists the ability to be on a ship year-round, to be able to study ocean and other bio climates, with the condition that they make their findings publicly available. Schmidt Sciences is focused on accelerating the scientific knowledge and the breakthroughs to ultimately support a thriving planet. And we have 5 programs under Schmidt Sciences. The first is Astrophysics in Space, which is focused on universe research through hard and software. Then we have AI and advanced computing, which is the fundamentals of artificial intelligence research applied to various spaces and domains, which we're going to hear from Javi Institute with Maya in just a moment. Our science systems, which is focused on how do we break down the barriers that prevent scientists from doing their work. Their climate work, which is focused on the warming planet and how do we continue to live and thrive through it through the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, biosciences, which is the full potential of biology in solving the world's most pressing problems. We do this through 3 different ways. I won't read all to you, and we'll try to make sure these slides are publicly available to you, just to give Maya the most amount of time. But you can see it builds upon a lot of things that James mentioned. Cross collaboration is very important to us. With that, I'll pass it on to you, Maya.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Maya Moretta. I have been working at Schmidt Sciences for almost 3 years now. So I'm really lucky to start working on the new HAVI program, which is Humanities and AI Virtual Institute. Can you do the next slide? Yeah, so HAVI sits under the AI and Advanced Computing Institute, which supports fundamental research in artificial intelligence, the application of AI and data science across a wide variety of disciplines, and the creation of high-impact research platforms that can speed discovery. Our flagship program is the AI 2050 program, which is an early career and a senior fellowship, which supports interdisciplinary research. We also have 2 other programs that have launched since, which is the AI safety program, which is ensuring that the technical capabilities of AI systems are safe and not harmful. And then AI at Work, which is exploring the different ways that the introduction of AI technologies are affecting the economy. Next slide. But I've been working on the HAVI program recently, and this is our team. We have Brent Seals, who is working as a distinguished visiting scientist. He also maintains an appointment at University of Kentucky, and his main focus in his research has been the virtual unwrapping, which is you can see through the Herculaneum scrolls. And then Holly Siren, who is a visiting scientist, who also maintains an appointment at Johns Hopkins, and she works with computational and critical methods to explore questions about narrative and language in literary and historical documents. And then I've been working on the program as an associate. This is my 2nd time working in humanities funding. I used to work at the Humanities Council in Maryland, so I'm excited to keep doing that. Next slide. So the mission of HAVI supports, which stands for the Humanities and Artificial Intelligence Virtual Institute. It supports research at the intersection of AI and the humanities. And the purpose is, it's a dual purpose, a bidirectional program. We believe that we want to catalyze groundbreaking domain-specific research outcomes in the humanities by integrating AI technologies in order to answer these really large questions. But we also believe that including humanistic understanding into the development of AI will create better artificial intelligence. One of the things is like, how do you create a generally intelligent system if it doesn't really understand what it is to be human? And so we really do believe that the way that humanistic research is being conducted and has been conducted for centuries can inform the way that we create better technological systems. Next slide. So we're really lucky to have really great support from our principals. So this quote is from Wendy Schmidt, and she said that the richness of this new era of AI applications is ripe for philanthropic support. It's essential, but expensive, high risk, and not immediately profitable. AI has often advantaged simplicity and clarity, like large language model finding that the most obvious next word. But for AI to be truly useful in fields outside of strict science, it needs to seek complexity, multiple meanings, nuance, all the stuff that makes us human. So I feel like a lot of people in this room would probably resonate with that as well. The next slide, please. So our first award that we've given out since we began at the end of this year, or the end of last year, is the Digital Delacroix program. That's at the Sorbonne Center for Artificial Intelligence in partnership with the Louvre. This project explores artistic processes of Eugene Delacroix, doing a cross-analysis of his vast body of work, including his writings, drawings, paintings, and prints. So with this project, they're using AI technology to not only understand his artistic process and to analyze his output, but by doing this, they're also able to identify what is not his, right? So like when he's painting these massive murals, like what did he actually paint versus what did other people in his studio paint? And so this has these really massive implications across all of art history, from being able to determine to be able to do reconstructions of lost artwork, being able to recognize artistic links that you might not have seen before. And also just kind of the other aspect of it is expanding AI technologies to be able to, first of all, do a multimodal analysis. So not just text, right? Because we're looking at murals. And integrating image, chemistry, environmental, and metadata analysis into these creations of these systems, which we think we're going to propel the capabilities of AI systems moving forward. Next slide. So now we can get into our expression of interest, which actually closes today. If you want to get on your laptop and write a 3-pager really quickly, if you've got an amazing idea, please, it's open till midnight anywhere on Earth. But the two focus areas or priority areas for this specific open call is heterogeneity and contextual understanding. So exploring and implementing various cultural, material, and perceptual differences in AI and the humanities to counter the tendency toward data homogenization and improve model effectiveness. And then also multimodal and multilingual understanding. So expanding AI methods beyond text to include visual and physical inputs, requiring new multimodal techniques and adaptations for humanistic data, and then also enhancing AI's linguistic diversity and multilingual abilities, which is going to remain crucial in order to allow these systems to actually be applicable and useful to people who are not in the English-speaking world. And so we believe that by improving these technologies, first of all, that exploring humanities questions will allow us to improve these technologies. And then also moving forward, it'll allow us to explore even more humanities questions. Okay, so the next slide. So what are we looking for? What do we think is a really great application? We want bidirectional learnings. We want breakthroughs in the humanities, and we also want breakthroughs in AI research. And we also want them to align with our priorities that I just mentioned before. We're also looking for ambition and novelty. We want a clear vision and understanding of where this is going to be situated currently in the research, but also how it could propel future research forward. And we also want a new and unique approach. We don't want business as usual. We really want an interesting and innovative ideas. And then interdisciplinary representation, we really, really want to stress that we want partnership between computer scientists and humanities researchers, not only just in the topic area, but specifically in the leadership of the teams. We really believe that the expertise in both areas are going to be necessary in order to create systems that actually work and interrogate questions in a way that is actually going to be beneficial for society. Next slide. What we are not looking for, unfortunately, we are not looking for artistic outputs, so we do not want to create the next Claude. Also, we're not looking for policy or policy adjacent work, any sort of advocacy projects. The development of just as I mentioned before, development of AI methods without a humanities focus, and humanities-based projects that do not propose a new use of AI. We want them to be, we want to have both in every single project. And then projects that primarily focus on pedagogy and curriculum development, and then non-technical aspects of AI. So, for example, like AI ethics, AI policy, AI governance research. And that does not necessarily mean that all of these things are going to be out of scope forever, but just for right now, that's not what we're focused on. Next slide, please. So one of the big things at Schmidt Sciences that we try to do is we try to provide resources beyond the check, right? So we do a lot of community building. We really want our grantees to be able to get together to share their learnings, to share their understanding. So we host both small scale workshops as well as larger events. Advisory support and expertise, we really look to find advisors who are interested in working directly with our awardees in order to provide them guidance throughout the project period and really be able to shape the program. And then resources and partnerships. We have different sorts of resources that we've partnered with different other AI institutions, such as the Center for AI Safety, which provides compute. We partner with OpenAI to provide API credits for computer scientists. And so they have access to the frontier models. But then we're also always doing calls in order to figure out how we can provide more resources to our awardees. And we're also trying to get as much feedback from the people who we fund in order to try to create the system and provide the resources that are most beneficial to them. Next slide. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here, and I'm so excited to answer everybody's questions.
All right, thank you. I have a million questions for our funders, but I'm sure you do too. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience first. We have about 25 minutes for questions, and then we will break for lunch. So questions for our funder panel.
Just a trivial question. When I get the deadline extended.
Maya, the question is, can we have just 1 day extension on that deadline, please?
Unfortunately, probably not, but you should shoot me an email. So.
And when will the next call be?
We don't know for sure. It'll probably won't be till next year though. But also, I will say we are not looking for full budgets. We are only looking for a top line number. So if you want to write really quickly, you might be able to get it done.
Right. Anywhere on Earth deadline. All right.
Anywhere on Earth. I don't change your VPN. I don't know.
Oh yeah, actually, I just want to say, like me and some USC colleagues, we are developing a proposal, and we will submit by the end of the day. Thank you. Yeah. We attended the workshop online last month. Yes.
Sorry, that was great. And I was curious from all of you, and the answer is likely different across these funding opportunities. What do you wish you saw more of in the applications, or saw in applications that you don't always see or regularly see? And you know, that could be a very boring answer, or it could be like, oh, we were waiting for someone to do X with the collection, or something else.
I'll go first, and I should mention that I'm new to the Newberry job, but previously worked at the Institute for Research in the Humanities at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I would say something that I've seen today that has absolutely blown me away, that would be great if we saw more of in our applications, is innovative projects that can be exciting for a broader public outside of academia. So I've really been excited by the creativity, the innovation, the cross-disciplinary research. At the Newberry, our collection tends older, projects tend more traditional. The types of things I've seen today have been really exciting. So innovation, creativity, thinking outside the box. And I think that would really resonate with our peer reviewers. It's a different review panel every year, but it would stand out.
It's a very interesting question. And as I said, I mean, in the end, obviously, peer review panels make judgments about that. But what we do, design programs, and I think one of the things that I've come to realize is how trapped we all are in the iron cage of the system as it is. So publishers publish in the humanities, publish traditional manuscripts, books. They've been publishing monographs for the same way at 100 years, and journals publish articles. And so scholars are rewarded for doing that work. And so as much as many of us want to push boundaries, change boundaries, the system is designed from the universities and campus-wide committees to departmental standards. But so everybody has a role in evolving the system. So that's why I think for us, working with the academic societies is so important. They write guidelines for assessing, helping departments to assess digital scholarship or collaborative scholarship or community engaged work. But that they write reports and they sit there, right? So I think one of the things that we talk about within our ACLS fellowship programs is the expectation is that it is a semester long or year long time away from teaching in order to conduct something that will be a book-like project, right? So, but we can nudge that by what we emphasize in what that kind of fellowship support can support. It need not support the solitary scholar, but that's what the whole system is built around. So I think all of us have a role in slowly nudging that system.
Maya, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question because I feel like sometimes, having been through a lot of down selection processes for multiple different programs, a lot of times it's not necessarily that the idea isn't what we're looking for, it's the way that it's being framed. So I feel like I've had a lot of conversations about certain projects, which something that's we're really passionate about is seeing the downstream effects of this research that's being done. So looking at some small thing, but how is it going to affect research moving forward? And I can see the glimmers of it in certain proposals, but it's not really like specifically articulated. And so the more ways that I think you can like demonstrate the broader impact outside of maybe the impact to your specific direct field or your direct niche is going to be really great for us, at least. And then also, I think one thing that we definitely look for and we think is really interesting is when people have interdisciplinary projects in teams. And I think that actually goes to my first point of how it has broader implications outside of your very specific topic area, because the more people you can bring in and the more different types of research angles that you can kind of incorporate into your thinking, I think the broader the implications and the impact of the work is. And so I think I don't necessarily know if that applies to every funder, but definitely for Schmidt Sciences, that's definitely something that we would like to see in almost all of the projects that we are funding.
Thank you. Other questions? Well, maybe I will give a question. I mean, it was sort of a strong theme, I think, in our first lightning talks about justice. We see that coming up again. So, James, it was great to hear about the digital justice work. But I think there is considerable concern about funding for equity-related work right now. And some say, well, let's turn from federal funders to other kinds of funders. Let's look at industrial partners and other philanthropic partners to fuel this. But I've also heard little words about your endowments today, and I'm sure there are concerns over the protection of your endowments in the current political environment as well. So can you say a little bit about how each of your organizations is considering its work towards diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice?
Start by saying from my seat, we have not made any changes to our funding. And if anything, we are just continuing with the path more now than ever. I would encourage you to definitely connect with me, connect with Maya as well. And because the Schmidt world beyond Schmidt Sciences, the Schmidt Family Foundation does focus a lot on impact investing through an equity lens. So I guess fear not in this way, because we're holding the line. Maya, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have necessarily changed the way that we're funding, and I think we're trying to work with our awardees to understand exactly what the implications of these changes are to them. We're doing surveys, we're talking about it, because there's also the angle of we don't want to jeopardize anybody's research angle because in a grant agreement, we say something that gets them flagged, right? And so I think there's like a very nuanced, well, we'd like it to be nuanced, I would say, but I think it's a very complicated situation right now, but I don't think that any of our priorities have changed, but we just are also kind of like figuring out how to operate in this new world where you can't really anticipate what the implications of anything you do is. So I would just say that I don't think we're changing any way that we are, what we're prioritizing, just maybe the way that we kind of move.
Yeah, and I'll say the Newberry is lucky in that we are an independent library and privately funded. All of our short-term research grants are entirely privately funded. Some of our long-term research grants are NEH grants, but we also have Mellon grants and then individual donors. So we're figuring out if anything related to federal funding and our NEH grants will be affected. I don't know much about that now. But I will say most of the work that the Newberry Library does is completely separate from needing federal funding. So only a few of our fellowships, which is a very small portion of the work that the Newberry does, is dependent upon that. So we have a lot of independence, strong leadership right now, who are committed to making sure that the scholarly community is supported, that important projects are getting done. And sometimes that's in the form of a fellowship, sometimes that's in a form of an undergraduate research center. It has to do with the exhibitions that we put on, the curators, what materials they're collecting. So it's a small portion, it's there, and we don't know the details right now.
What a world we live in. We are being mindful of following laws, which we have to do. And we are also mindful of what Maya pointed out, which is that people and institutions can get in trouble for work that we support. So we definitely. Hello? Working. We have awardees for fellowship programs who don't want to be listed on our site, and or don't want their projects listed on our site. So this is this kind of mindfulness of not only the bullying power of the government, but also the terrifying, effects on people, is something we're adapting to. Let me say that that the idea that a program called justice is now frowned upon as a word to use in this country is kind of surprising. So we definitely are working with lawyers to make sure that everything we're doing is legal, but we're going to continue doing our work.
Thank you very much, James, for these last words. So I'm really grateful for this heavy project because we submitted something yesterday. So the project that I presented this morning, that is our heavy submission. But what I wanted to tell you is kind of, so the situation is dire for us in the world of the humanities. So thinking about the issues that Cassidy was talking about and other things that were discussed here, it would be great if you as the funders could not only think about continuing what you are doing, but also trying to compensate what is failing in the publicly funded area. So there should be possibilities. And so as far as I know, my colleagues here, we would not hide, we would not be hiding that we are talking about justice and equity issues. So if you as funding agency would provide more opportunities in these areas, which are under threat right now, that would just be great. Thank you.
And I'm not in the room, so I can't grab you for coffee or at lunch, but I think that we would love to understand from the people who are on the ground who are doing this, what the implications of these changes are to you and how to best support you. So I really do I really would love it if people would reach out and schedule a call just so, we cannot promise anything, but so that when we make our future decisions, we're fully understanding what the implications are of these changes on researchers and what are the small scale and the large scale solutions that we can provide, because we cannot plug the hole of the federal government. It's just not possible. But what are the kind of things that we can do in order to prevent very dire implications of these changes? So I really would want to stress that I would love to speak with people just so we can kind of get a full picture of what are the actual best solutions that we could provide.
Thank you to the committee, to the Roundtable panelists. I've really appreciated this. I wanted to follow up on one point. James, you said higher ed is basically like 1,000 tall trees all standing separately, right? Maybe the number was higher, 3,500. Okay. And I'm wondering, looking at the funding landscape for the humanities out there, much of it is done individually or for small groups. And I'm wondering, what about the collaborative institutional type of funding that might support larger initiatives? A lot of institutions are right now facing challenges we can tell you how much we've lost from the different funding cuts that are going to be having ripple effects undoubtedly on the humanities down the road. And each institution can tell you that. Obviously, you don't have the resources to backfill all of that. But are there things we can do where we can pair with other institutions, develop consortia, collaborations to build these kinds of networks that might strengthen the humanities? And I think each of you might have a very different kind of response to that. But what strategies would you pursue if you were in our position here at Georgia Tech, where we don't have any kind of single humanities institute, center, lab, whatever we want to call it, but we might want to build something like that under financial duress? Where are the places we could go? How could we strategically think about doing those kinds of things? This is for all three.
All right, I'll start, John, since such an easy question. I think it's I think that the generative work that you're doing here in setting up this program of saying we have sort of areas of progress and areas of work across this fascinating campus, and how do we best draw them together, not so that we can have an aggregation of specialists having lunch together and talking about their specialty, but actually foster the collaboration that we've heard from this morning. Is really exciting. And I think what you're asking is how do we do that at a larger scale, an interinstitutional scale, which is, dreamy to my mind. Okay. I think that the resources, as we've heard, were constrained before 2 weeks ago, and now they're getting more and more constrained. And while some agencies, the MacArthur Foundation, other foundations are upping their draw from their endowment in this crazy time, and we will certainly look at what we're able to do without obviously intergenerational disadvantage, that we all are mindful of. I think that the really sober and horrifying thing that we have to think about is what rebuilding is like. And we don't know when rebuilding begins because we still are in the earliest stage of deconstruction, unfortunately. And not just the humanities are like, a flea on the speck on the shoulder of the deconstruction and the destruction that we're seeing now. But we do have to think of, I think the real answer to your question is really hard because it's a hard question for the archipelago of higher education generally. It's like, how can we actually do things together? Because the system of higher education in this country is built to compete like hell. Let's be honest. We compete for students, we compete for faculty, we compete for grants, right? So the idea of how could we really deeply collaborate on things as fundamental as teaching and courses and libraries, collaborate better than anyone, but there's still much to do, right? To rebuild and have a place for the humanities and a place that does all the new and interesting things that we've heard about today, rather than only the old. And I'm not against the old stuff. My degree's in Renaissance literature. I love, so I'm not saying we get rid of the old stuff, but I'm saying a pluralistic approach to innovative, interdisciplinary, sophisticated 21st century humanities will only grow out of this destruction with deeper interinstitutional collaboration that we're not built for. So that's what we have to work on.
Yeah, I can't tell you how firmly I support that entire thought. And your question, I think, is a really good one. I guess my question would be, is there any way we could get together and with funding agencies, with other institutions, and unify on coming up with a narrative and a story that gets the public to appreciate the humanities more? I mean, as you say, the National Endowment for the Humanities financially is a speck. I mean, the amount of money that it actually represents compared to the federal government is so small that it's just mean. But we are obviously in a position now where not only higher education, but humanities has kind of lost the narrative with the general public. And so anything we can do to get together and actually put that into the front burner, and I think funding agencies like yours could really help us, I think would be in the long term a great benefit to us. I'll just give you a very simple example from the other side of the coin. The other day I was talking to someone in health research, And they were saying, when you go to the doctor, there's a portal in your health system, right? You have to go to online, you make an appointment, right? It sometimes gives you instructions on the procedure. Why not attach to that an interesting little video or the narrative about what research was done, right, to build the procedure like an fMRI machine that you're going to now get diagnosed with? And how is it funded by the NIH? And why was the indirect cost completely essential to that? I mean, that's a little much, but you can see the point. If you were actually getting people who were going to a procedure to see how university research was crucial in coming up with that device, that can make a difference. We need something like that, because everybody in this room you're preaching to the converted, obviously, right? But we need something as a narrative that could reach out more broadly than our group and make contact with the public to show the value of the humanities, which is obvious to us, but not to everybody. So I think that's it. Getting us together and through this, I think, is the crucial thing we have to face right now.
I just want to say one thing in response to that. So the Newberry as a library is trying to communicate with our partners and become a hub both for academic audiences and library audiences, where we can sort of think together, strategize. John Paul Christie, who was at the ACLS, created a forum of fellowship directors. We have a meeting next week. We're trying to meet more regularly. So I think that I really only see the fellowship side, but people are trying to come together and think through things. Similarly, I think our consortium of Renaissance Studies or Indigenous Studies also might bring together the leaders from the consortium institutions, which, I mean, as James said, this is only a start, right? But we're trying, and to the extent that anyone's interested in getting involved in the Fellowship Directors Forum or those consortium, let me know.
I'd also just this might be kind of out of left field, but as a person who's been working both in humanities research or funding humanities research and scientific research, I think what's really interesting is like this conversation is happening not only for this community, but for almost the entire research community. And it's very interesting because I think other research communities haven't experienced anything like this before. I think that they're kind of a little bit more used to having very large budgets, having multiple areas where they can receive funding. And as I said, I used to work for the Humanities Council, and the largest awards we were giving out were like $50,000, right? So that was like a very typical thing in that field. And so I do think not only just building collaborations among other humanities researchers and other humanities consortiums that are struggling, but honestly, the entire research community as a whole, because I really do think it's all valuable. And I think that there's some solidarity that could be had in terms of bringing in environmental researchers, people who are doing the climate work, people like everybody who's really getting cut. It's not just these silos. And so, I mean, I think even expanding outside of the current community, just into the entire research community in general, to be able to kind of advocate for research in general would be really beneficial, possibly.
Maya, do you want to say 2 sentences about what Brittany is doing with Schmidt or with Science Communications, where she runs those programs with grantees? Are you familiar with
the workshops?
Yes.
Yeah, so she works on the Science Communications program, which is the point of that program is to support science communicators, so people who can translate scientific research to the public so they kind of understand the implications of these things. And they fund people all the way from journalists to like people who are TikTokers who are also activists. So with these kinds of workshops, she's bringing together not just researchers and people who are doing hard science, but also people who are able to translate these things to the general public in order to have this kind of through line so that the research isn't lost in nature, right? It's like actually making it to individual people. And so that is one thing that also Wendy's really passionate about is how do we communicate the findings of the research to the broader public in order to not only articulate why it's important, but also like why it's important to people's lives, right? And so I think, yeah, and then those workshops are really just like no more than 50 people, but I really think that the outputs of them are pretty wide-reaching. So
I have sort of a follow-up question to that point, actually. So I'm curious about your thoughts on what preferred kind of academic outputs you might want for our projects, right? So that as academics, of course, like on the one hand, we have our goals of our typical professional products, peer-reviewed academic journals, our teaching, books, right? But then also some of us, you've seen a lot of it today, people working on things that are maybe more public-facing, op-eds, maybe a book with a popular press. We've seen neat stuff today about documentaries, public-facing websites or something developed. And my question is, like, do you have preferences here? I know the answer is going to be something like both and, but are there also, it at your core is something like, yeah, but what we're really trying to do is, peer-reviewed journal articles here, or what we're really trying to do is public outreach or something like that. I'm curious to see what sorts of what you want to see in proposals in terms of outputs and how well that jives with what we're all trying to accomplish.
I think it's the output that's the most influential or the most impactful. I mean, I think that getting a Forbes article that's 500 words written about what you do, it might reach a lot of people, but it's not going to influence a lot of people, right? Like, I think that that's a very different thing than creating some sort of platform in which people can interact with the like census records of enslaved people, right? Like, those are two very different types of forward-facing publications, I think. And so I really think it's about the way that it's not just about people being able to see things, it's about people being able to like really engage with it, and for it to kind of like change how they think about the world. And then also I do think that we have an ethos of the idea that we want our research to be able to influence other research, right? So I think we still very much value hard publications. So I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, I am both anding, just with a yeah, the caveat of I think the most robust version of a public facing output is probably the best.
So I will add my own both and answer, which is, I think as Maya says, I mean, basic research and good solid scholarship of various kinds is absolutely essential. We can't lose that. I think that I've seen some models of sort of more pyramid thinking on one's research, that there's the underlying research and the underlying evidence base, and then there's a publication, and then at sort of at the top of the pyramid there's something like the conversation where it's getting out there. I mean, I don't think the conversation is USA Today exactly. I don't think everyone's reading it, but I think it's meant to get the research out there in more publicly accessible ways. And I think other people's work, I think one thing in terms of the norms of the academy, I think sort of having greater respect for people who can communicate their work broadly. I mean, I always was aghast at the idea that Stephen Jay Gould was considered a popularizer because he was, writing books that people actually read. So I think some of it is norms, but I think also back to your point, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but we'll have lunch. But I think the future of universities returning to being anchor institutions in their community is like the clearest way forward. And when I think of people like Nancy Cantor, who is at Rutgers Newark and now at Hunter, and there's actually an anchor institution network. I mean, all politics now, all national politics are local. I mean, every race is full of, are you on the Trump or anti-Trump side, no matter what. And it didn't used to be that way, but universities embedded in their communities and working with their community, people are going to care, and employers are going to care. They want people to hire people, and communities see what the benefits are from faculty and students and staff who are engaged in the community. And I think if we don't, I think that's where our clearest path to being valued again is.
Yeah, and I'll just add for Newberry specific, because we are so rooted in our collection, I would say that ideally our research projects would produce innovative outputs that are collection based, but make our collection or the knowledge that comes from our collection available to a broader public. And I think we still tend to look mostly at book projects, but doesn't have to be. You know, a research documentary project would be, yeah, very interesting.
Thank you. I know you are all have more questions that you want to ask this, but I'd love for us to take these conversations about collaboration, about community, and how we move forward into outreach into the lunch. So please join me in thanking our funder panelists.
Bye, Maya. Thank you.
Bye. And if anybody would like my email, Yvonne can probably give it to you. So
Share it. I'll share it.
have a great lunch. Bye, everybody.